So statistically speaking too, I knew that the overwhelming majority of seniors in America have less than $1,000 to their name.
Yeah.
But 88% of the houses that are owned by seniors, and seniors own over 80% of the houses in America right now, are actually free and clear. So I'm like, man, there's got to be a way for these people that have no money to be able to afford long-term care when they're making that transition. If you're a real estate investor,
I hope you're taking notes right now. I'm just saying. Fam, what's up? Welcome back to the CEO Pulse Podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. We are sitting down today with Stephen Hunt. All right, check out. This guy hopped into real estate investments 2 years ago. All right, just 2 years ago.
Just under 2 years ago,
Just under 2 years ago. You're coming in from corporate, right? But over the span of these 2 years, or just under the 2 years, you've acquired 15 rentals. You did 47 flips. I mean, that's insane, if you ask me.
Thank you.
Built a property management company, that one over the last year. Now you have just under 100 units in management through that property management company, and built a net worth of what did you say, over $3 million?
Over $3 million, yeah.
Over $3 million. All right, that's so big kudos. I wanna tap into all of that stuff. I really don't like to kind of beat around the bush too much when it comes to like the stuff that, like, we go for the nuts and bolts, you know what I mean? So I want to squeeze all the golden nuggets out of you. I want to have this conversation where we find out how the heck you're putting together all these things over a period of just under 2 years. Most people go their entire lives, right, trying to get 1, 2, 3 rentals. Maybe I did a flip in 2006, and right. I'm a flipper now. But you're doing it, man. You're actually doing it. We had meetings in my office previously about property management, and that's how we got like the inside of your business model and everything. So glad to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for spending the time with me and dropping gold.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. By the way, thank you so much for having me. And I'm an open book. So anything you want to know, anything you want to ask, like, ask away. Let's get into the details.
This is pretty laid back. I mean, you'll see the vibe of it. So let's break it down with, or start off with, you're coming in from corporate, right?
Yeah.
How old are you?
Just turned 29.
29, right?
Yeah.
You're still in your 20s. Dude, that's very impressive. Like,
Thank you.
The stuff that you've been able to accomplish in the last couple of years usually comes with a seasoned, like older type of person who's, who's got like that I don't know, the track record, or like I don't know, something like that. Anyways, like, there's a lot of merit to what you've done. So with that being said, you're 29 years old. Again, you were in corporate before then. What were you doing in that corporate space? Yeah,
so the corporate space, man, I was doing sales. So I've done sales since I was about 18 years old. I started off working at LA Fitness, selling gym memberships, doing that whole world. And I knew in my heart of hearts that I had to be really good at sales if I ever wanted to have a business. And my whole goal, my whole dream, my whole life was become an entrepreneur. But I thought being an entrepreneur was just the top of the food chain, that, people that eventually worked their way up in corporate enough would eventually switch over to becoming an entrepreneur, starting a business, because that's where the real money is.
Yeah.
Completely false, by the way, right? So you don't need to have any corporate experience. You need no experience of any kind to get into entrepreneurship. But that's the path that I thought that I had to take. So I took it upon myself and said, hey, let's learn everything we possibly can. Let's become phenomenal at sales. Let's learn everything about business. Let's over-prepare, essentially, for this transition that's eventually going to happen, this dream that I'm too scared to jump out and do on my own. So that's exactly what I did. I developed a really high-level sales skill set. I was crushing it at all the companies that I was working with. I did software sales. I did medical sales. I did all those types of things. And as I was crushing those quotas, I was realizing there's a lot of other issues within these businesses that I was working with, and that was that they had high attrition rates when it came to their sales departments and their sales teams. So I started to step out of bounds a lot in those situations because I'd gotten my sales skill set down. Now I wanted to help other people, and then I was focusing on other bigger issues that were inside these companies. So I started creating sales trainings and starting implementing those in those companies. They ended up taking those trainings. They still use them to this day, by the way. These are like billion-dollar companies that are doing crazy revenues. So the fact that they were taking my ideas, I thought that I was doing something big for the company. Well, in corporate America, that's not how it works. I was actually stepping on a lot of people's toes. Yeah. And they didn't love that this 23-year-old kid, 24-year-old kid was walking in and stepping on everybody's toes. So it ended up leading to me getting fired a lot.
Yeah.
Even though I was crushing my sales quotas, even though I was an asset to the team, in that case, they didn't like it.
Dude, that story resonates so much with me.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, coming up, my first, I guess, I used to be a firefighter, and I met a lot of great people there. But after that, when I left the fire department and I started, tapping into different places to work, people will get pissed off because of the performance. Like it's like in my head, and I think we're wired like that as entrepreneurs, right? People say entrepreneurs are born. I think it's an attitude. It's not necessarily that we're born with like the know-how, the skill set of the nuts and bolts of everything, but the attitude is there. It's like I'm gonna give it my best because that's what I'm doing. Like that's what I do. If I'm mopping the floor, it's gotta be the best fucking mop floor ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you eat off of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, to me, it didn't make a lot of sense how people get upset when when I would perform and do my thing, and it was like, oh, you're shedding, you're casting a shadow on somebody else's performance. Like, well, perform better. Like it's
right.
Put it out.
It's very political, and everybody's out to win themselves. And you notice this a lot. And there's a book that talks about this. It's called The Peter Principle. People rise to their level of incompetence when it comes to any of this kind of stuff, right? So especially in corporate America, and you'll see a lot of directors, VPs, COOs, people that are at the top, and they hire people that are worse than them, below them, because they have this. They don't want to cast a shadow on themselves. They don't want somebody to be better than them. That's their job security. They have to have stupider people, for lack of a better word, right? Stupider people below them. So that way they're still the top dog at all times. And that is the political game of corporate America. And I hated it. Couldn't stand it. Because I was always trying to solve bigger problems. Hey, there's more here that's an issue within the company versus just me hitting my sales quota. Why don't we target these bigger issues? And everybody hated it, right? I knew, going back to with the entrepreneurship and all of this, I knew nothing about entrepreneurship going into this. So for me, it was always learning consistently and then implementing exactly what I was learning as fast as I possibly could, especially when I'm getting paid to do it in a corporate job. So I was constantly teaching myself and educating myself on what was going on in the company because I was noticing things, but I wasn't able to really identify what that meant or why those issues were happening. So I started using that as a learning opportunity. And I think that aided me a lot in moving over to entrepreneurship because I kind of learned all these intangible things that didn't make sense to me at the time. I would read the books and half the words didn't make sense to me because entrepreneurship has its own lingo and its own way of being, especially compared to corporate. So doing that really helped aid me in that transition too.
That's huge, man. I mean, it speaks to the mindset that you had early on. I wasn't thinking that way. When I first launched my first business, I was chasing the dollar. I just wanted to make some cash, but I wasn't thinking on the personal growth side, on the getting better side. I was like, I just wanted to results, right?
Yeah.
There's I think it's a very, very cold hard truth, but I feel like the entrepreneur hell is unrealized potential.
Oh my gosh.
Unrealized potential.
Yeah.
It's when we're trapped in that corporate space or in a space where you can't really thrive, you can't bring your ideas, and not necessarily they're going to be the best all the time, right? Like my ideas are not the best all the time, and I'll be the first one to admit it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah,
I've had some crappy ones.
That was stupid. All right, good. Moving on. So but what happens is like we have there's a need, right, to thrive in a space where there's no glass ceiling. It's like shit, man. Like there's so much potential that we can tap into. Leave space in your mind for the possibilities, and that's something that I found I could not do when I wasn't working on my own business.
Yes,
as not an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, I think another common misconception people see with entrepreneurs too, in that same regard, is people making that shift mentally to okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now. They look at Mark Cuban, they look at these big dogs that are in the space. Okay, he wakes up at 5 a.m., then he does this, and he has the morning routine. It takes him 3 hours to get ready because of that. And they think they have to follow this certain path. And that's what being an entrepreneur is that they're this person with the great ideas or they're creating a new product or service. And that's not the case. It's just you have to go out. You have to have the ability to be a self-starter. Yeah. But also you have the ability as an entrepreneur too, if you are not that self-starter type of person, but you're fantastic at follow through and pulling through, of partnering up with people that have that mentality as well. You have this visionary and integrator side to things, and people think it has to be all on one person, and it's not the case. You always have the opportunity to partner with somebody that can help drive things forward and share that burden as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. You mentioned something which is it's the like the fear of doing stuff on your own, right? I feel like it's something that it's a common thing as we're getting into the space, especially if you're bootstrap. I come from a bootstrap background, right?
Totally.
Like so launched my first business with my own time, me being the janitor, the mechanic, the everything.
Yeah.
So the dispatcher, the driver, it was a transportation business. So like wearing all the hats, right, per se. And doing that, I feel like it can be less scary than when you bring on your first hire. Right. And then it's like,
what do I do with them now?
What do I do? I got to keep them busy. That's one, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then that's one, but there's a lot of things. Like if you start even giving it some thought and think 3 months into it, you start, with a lot of the what ifs. What if this thing doesn't work? What if I'm in the, like this person is going to be out of a job, and it gets scary, right? Yeah. Like it's as we go on, if we overthink it, it gets scary. So I have a tendency not to overthink.
Never overthink.
Yeah. If anything,
I just move forward.
If anything, bro, I underthink a lot of things. But yeah, so how did you go about it? I mean, you were coming in from this corporate space. You had the mindset that you wanted to grow. You started reading, obviously, at an early age, which is huge, man. It's huge. Guys, if you're not picking up books, you're in your low 20s and your teens and whatnot, like do it, like right now.
It's a requirement, truly. Yeah. It is a requirement. Can you get a lot of this experience in the field by becoming an entrepreneur? Yes, but you're going to be behind the 8 ball in that sense too. Because there's other people out there that are doing it and they're getting ahead of you and they're going to dominate you. That's all that's going to happen. Get audiobooks if you can't read them, or just read the books. Commit to 5. I was a terrible reader, dude. I think I graduated high school with a 1.3 GPA. I was not a book smart kid in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. But I made a commitment to myself that I was going to get through these books. And I'm like, dude, if I want to be rich, I got to know something. Yeah. Right? So I would go and I'd read these books, and a lot of the times I'd read 5 pages and go, what the hell did I just read? Let's go back to those 5 pages again. And I would just do that over and over again. And eventually I built that habit up to where I was able to read books. And I just switched over to audiobooks at some point too. But depending on the book, I'll choose, like, do I want to sit down and read this one or listen?
I do a mix, man. I usually buy the audiobook.
Yep.
When I'm working out at the gym, like just phase out. And I'm listening to books. I'm actually, when I'm working out and doing my thing, it's usually books that I have on my headset, not music. So I'll do that, and then I'll do a physical book. So I like doing both, and I'll pick up, like I stopped reading at one point, or listening to the audiobook at, chapter 7 or whatever, pick it up from there, and read it some, and then it's just like, it's a good mix, but it works for me. One story that I kept telling myself was like, no, I don't like reading. I hate reading. Yep. I was just reading the wrong stuff. That's it. When I started picking up stuff that was actually interesting to me, I was like, man, I can read.
Dude, it's crazy, right?
What is this?
The first book that had that shift for me, because I was the same exact way as you, right? I was like, it's not my thing. I'll watch YouTube videos. I'll do something else. Yeah. The first book that changed that for me was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, right? I think it's everybody's in entrepreneurship or real estate investing. That book that like made the impact where you're
right
like,
there.
Here's the shift, right? It changed so many lives. For me, that book was so thrilling to read through. I finished the entire thing in a day. And in order to get me and my wife on the same page too in business, because we do business together, I said, hey, I really need you to read this, because I was on this different page now of what we were going to do with our money and our finances and the steps we were going to take forward. And she was like, real estate investing, kind of scary. Like, how are we going to buy a house? That makes no sense. And then gave her that book, and she's like, holy shit, we're doing this. Yeah. We're buying houses. Yes, I get it. But that threw us off into a entirely different thing. Then we were at 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. That's a hype book. It's just there to hype you up, which it did. Hyped us up majorly. Then we got into the Think and Grow Rich, and how to win friends, influence people, that kind of stuff.
What happens too when you start getting into that path, right? And it's really, I mean, you can see it as intellectual growth, but it's really just personal growth altogether. Totally. When you start getting into that path, you start having different points of reference, so you can actually have some critical thinking. Okay, this book says this book says that. They're opposites, but what do I think? Right, so it forces you to come up with your own, synthesis of ideas and
which is crucial,
things.
Right? Yeah, it's crucial in entrepreneurship, and everybody thinks so. Especially if you're coming from the corporate world, things are laid out for you a specific way. So, okay, here's my systems, here's my processes. These are the steps that I have to take. It's the same thing when you're in school too. Okay, here's what you have to do. It's all laid out for you. And in entrepreneurship, it's not. You need critical thinking skills.
Absolutely,
it's fantastic to get other people's perspectives. It doesn't mean you have to take them, but take them in at least. Understand and be open-minded to what else is out there.
Yeah.
my wife and I did a great job of this. We're different personalities to a lot of extents. She's extremely organized, straight A student, 1.3 GPA kid over here. You know what I mean? That was very distractible. So very different people, but we would go and buy a bunch of different books. So sales books, I'll give you an example. We both tried to build our sales skills at the same exact time. We would get sales books. We would read the books, each have a different book. We'd go on a walk every single night, and we would tell each other what we learned in those books. Then when we finished the books, we would swap the books and then read those books and do the same exact thing and talk about it at nighttime, because I want to see how she perceived the book and what did she get from it as opposed to what I got from it, because we had totally different takeaways, which is fantastic.
Well, your 2 years of exploding, success are making a lot of sense right now to me. Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. That's incredible. It's a great practice. If you have the backup right like that, and you guys collaborate that way, I mean, dude, it's a winning recipe. Really, it truly is.
Totally, dude. It's fun. It leads me and my wife. We always make the joke. We're like, we love to role play. I'm like, but it's not that kind of role play that's in the bedroom. It's like we do sales role play, and we do do a lot of all the time. Yeah, we're like, hey, how would I address this situation with this person from a leadership perspective? Like, we from the corporate America side and all that kind of stuff. We've always done that.
Oh, it's awesome, man. When you have some I feel like when you have the combination of a structure and you see the structure right from corporate, like, okay, this is systems and processes and how things work and how businesses get scaled and everything, right? And then you throw in the scrappiness of an entrepreneur who's just making it, it's hungry and it's like thirsty and it's got that drive and that that willingness to just not give up and figure stuff out. Yeah, bro, it's a winning combination.
Oh, it's fantastic. A winning combination. You get the opportunity to learn from these big companies that are wasting money on nothing, basically, to see what works and what doesn't work. And if you can be alert enough while you're in your corporate job, people all the time say to me like, "Hey, man, I really want to leave my corporate job. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to put my back up against the wall." And I'm like, "Don't do that. Don't do that yet." You hate your corporate job. I understand that, but have you done everything to maximize that corporate job yet? Because you are in a situation right now where you're getting paid to learn skill sets. Yeah, I was getting paid. Yeah. Dude, it's like, and a lot of money in a lot of cases, especially in sales. I was making upwards of $200,000 a year in medical sales. But while I was doing that, I was developing my sales skill sets further, my leadership skill sets further. I was able to see what's going on in the company. I took that opportunity to see what are they doing and how can I learn from what they're doing, because this is a $1 billion company. Like, they're clearly doing something right. And a lot of people look at that going, oh, it's too big. It's become too corporate. There's nothing to really learn. Not the case. Just look at your individual department then, if that's the case. Yeah. Maximize what you have going on there.
Well, when it comes to business systems and processes, man, like it doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur, you can still adopt the behaviors and the habits that they have, at a corporate level, right? Yeah. I mean, it's one of the things that to my coaching students, it's one of the things that I lean into hard. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a one-person shop, a two-person operation. We can still break things down and have this methodical process of building the business in a way that you can step away from it tomorrow. And like, to me, it was one of the biggest takeaways from for example, operating at the fire department. There was SOPs for everything. Standard operating procedures for everything, right? From how you do a checkoff on an engine to the trainings to the drills to like everything was laid out. So you had to come in and it was like almost like checklist style. So it gave me that discipline to do it, one, and then two, to pick up that train of thought. So everything after that is like, okay, it's got to be linear, it's got to be understandable, it's got to be simple, right? My methodology of building stuff is when it comes to ops is I call it the LESS approach: lean, effective, strategic, and simple. If I can make something lean, a business model, right? If I can make it lean, and I can, it's gonna be effective. It's got to be effective, not just tasky work, right? Strategic. There's an outcome. There's something that's everything's targeted to, and it's simple. People they're actually gonna use it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love all of that entirely. There's so much opportunity within the corporate world. Look at the way people are doing their systems and processes, because it's going to directly reflect when you start your own business. You think you may not need it, but you do. Like, as soon as you start hiring, we mentioned the employees in the beginning, right? Yeah. Okay, I hired my first person. Well, shit, what tasks did they take on? Yeah. The first employee I hired, I wanted a Swiss Army knife that could do everything. It was a terrible decision. Yeah. That dude did nothing. Because I tried to give him everything. That was the problem.
Got confused.
He got confused. He's like, so am I doing this and that? And then he'd feel overwhelmed because there's all these things. Yeah. So he was just doing one thing only. And then eventually that faded off and it didn't work out. And then that's when he said, okay, I'm going to treat this like it's corporate America again. And we're going to give you very specific tasks. And we're going to hire a couple people instead and just be very specific on exactly what they're going to do.
So we're kind of back into that corporate, state of beingness when it comes to the business, right? But now we're building that, so we can bring in the culture, we can bring the vision. Yeah, we can copy the some of the frameworks, I guess, but make it ours. And I mean, I feel like it's one of the most beautiful things about entrepreneurship, right? You have your own ball of wax, you can shape it whichever way you want.
Oh yeah.
And if you're intentional about it, you can step away from it. The thing can still be rolling. You build a machine.
It's beautiful.
I mean, you seem to be doing very well. So like those numbers that we were talking about at the beginning, I mean, they're nothing short of impressive.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
So big kudos on that. So you have Senior Gaps, which is your fix and flip real estate investment company, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Habu, which is highest and best use.
Yes,
right?
the highest and best use property
Habu.
management company.
Yeah. So tell me about that, like building those. I mean, basically, you're coming up with two companies at the same time. I mean, right now, it's what's happening. How do you consolidate all of that? And what do you say to somebody out there who they can't take the leap yet?
Yeah.
Like they're thinking about it.
Ultimately, you have to take the leap. It's going to be scary, and you have to be okay with failing, right? If that means that you need to save up $100,000 in your bank account so you feel secure and you give yourself a full year runway, of being able to make mistakes and go out and do things, so be it. If you're somebody that wants to put your back up against the wall, that's not my personality. I hate the idea of having stress and being like, where's the next paycheck? Where's the next paycheck?
Yeah.
Hate that idea. That doesn't work for me, but it works for a lot of people. My sister-in-law, she's in Jacksonville, Florida. I was just telling you about her as a buyer in Jacksonville. She was that person that's like, you got to put your back up against the wall. That's the only way that really works for me. And I'm like, oh, dude, that would stress me out. I might freeze. I got to
bridges. I can also relate to that. Anyways, I'll tap into it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll cut you off.
So when I made that transition from corporate America, I was at that point looking into real estate, really felt like I had a strong understanding of how it needed to work, but I was looking at what everybody else was doing. And I was like, okay, I just got to outcompete with everybody else. I got to make the cold calls or door knock or do whatever it takes when it comes to the real estate side. Ended up hiring VAs while I was in corporate because I could afford them. Yeah. And I was like, let's do this. Well, when I ended up leaving corporate, it was a very last minute decision. It was a same scenario as always, stepping on people's toes. My manager goes, hey, would you be open to a mutual separation from the company? We'll give you a severance package. And I'm like, yeah, totally. Let's do it for sure. You'll pay me for a month or two? Okay, yeah, that gives me a month or two runway here as well to get things going. So when I did that, I canceled out all of my systems in the real estate side. And I was like, I need to figure out something that's going to work for me because if I'm just copying everybody else, that's not my personality. I have to do my own thing. So that's where Senior Gaps came from. I decided that, okay, where are my target audience, my target clientele that I want to work with when it comes to real estate? Where are they? Who are my favorite sellers that I've been able to talk to? It was always elderly people, and I have a huge passion for personal finances and that kind of stuff. So statistically speaking too, I knew that the overwhelming majority of seniors in America have less than $1,000 to their name.
Yeah.
But 88% of the houses that are owned by seniors, and seniors own over 80% of the houses in America right now, are actually free and clear. So I'm like, man, there's got to be a way for these people that have no money to be able to afford long-term care when they're making that transition. If you're a real estate investor, I
hope you're taking notes right now. I'm just saying.
I appreciate it. So I said, how are these people going to afford long-term care? The average cost of long-term care in the state of Arizona is $8,500 a month. That's like $100,000 a year for people that don't have $1,000 to their name. What are these people doing? What happens to the houses? Like I started having all these questions about it. What do we do in those situations? Well, the state ends up taking the houses if they can't afford their care, and the state has to come in with Medicaid or All-Tex to be able to pay for their care and afford their care. So for me, I'm like, okay, so it's like going to a Medicaid office for medical sales in my case, which I knew those were state funded. I knew that they didn't have the resources. I knew that they didn't have everything they needed because it's a government program for these individuals when they should be going somewhere that's going to give them the best opportunity for care. So I went ahead and decided I'm going to start reaching out to hospitals, which was already in my experience from medical sales, assisted living communities, memory care facilities, anything that was related to that industry where people were in a very urgent situation because of their health. Mom fell, okay, she has dementia, this is going on, something's happening, it's an urgent situation, the doctor said you cannot go back home. What do these people do? They get stuck in the hospitals for a month, 2 months, 3 months. I've gotten calls from the hospital where they go, hey, this person was supposed to be here for 2 days, it's day 36. Can you help us? What can we do here? So the way that I brought these to these companies was as, it's called Golden Age Property Solutions, but I call it Senior Gaps because we're filling the gaps there for these people, right? So went to these companies and I productized all the ways that you can transact real estate and I turned them into a service. So now no longer was I going in there saying, hey, will you sell me your house? That's what a lot of people do with probate attorneys. Awful strategy, by the way. Don't try to just get the houses from them. Bring value to them and be a I don't want to say wolf in sheep's clothing, right? But you want to come as something else other than this real estate investor. I'm not a real estate investor in Senior Gaps. I'm helping solve problems for these individuals. So I went in there and I productized all the ways you can transact real estate. That's cash deals, subject to, seller finance, any way that you can transact real estate. And I renamed them, rebranded them as services. Hey, did you know there's more than one way to buy a house or to have somebody sell their house? We want to be able to help maximize these people's equity and help them afford long-term care for the long term, not just for a year or two before they have to switch to the next community that is state funded. We want to help them afford this for the long term. So that was the approach we went in with that. The other side to that was understanding what those businesses needed. So earlier I mentioned they called me on day 36 because she was stuck in the hospital. One of the patients, one of the clients that we worked with. On day 36, the hospital's losing their ass, dude. They have somebody in that hospital bed that they're like, we got to get them out of the hospital. They're not paying. She has less than $1,000 to her name. Yeah. They're not paying. We need to get her out so we can make some money. So for them, there's urgency to get her out of there. On the other side of that too, the assisted living community on average, I asked all of them the same exact question. It's taking people anywhere from 6 to 9 months to transition from their home over to the community, because think about it. As somebody's health declines, you're starting to see the property decline too, because if a window breaks, they're not going to replace it. If the plumbing goes out, they're not going to replace it. Hey, the pool's empty. Just leave it empty. I'm not going to fix that. Why would I do that? I don't have any money. So for them, I was like, hey, it's usually taking 6 to 9 months for this. What if I shorten that transition period down to 2 weeks? Is that something you would find value in? I can help your conversion rate, essentially, right? If we look at it from the sales perspective, from 6 to 9 months and take it down to 2 weeks, would that be beneficial to you and your patients? It's a game changer to them, right? So to them, they're like, you can't do that. There's not, but you don't understand. No, you don't understand these houses. Like some of them have poop all over the floor. Some of them are. I'm like, we do it all. You know what I mean? It's the investor side of me is like, money, perfect.
You know, when you bring that up, right? Like I feel like a lot of the stigma out there, you know, in terms of what we do as real estate investors, and is like they see us as the big bad wolf, right? But in reality, like the stuff that we get, man, it's like we got to a point where we had hazmat suits on the cars, just to walk in and do a property walkthrough. Yeah. So it's you know, it's type of stuff that it's in dire distress. It's not going to be the average, you know, person, but the need is out there and it's incredibly high. Yeah. Well,
and what a lot of people don't get on the investor side of this too, because people are going to say, oh, but you're getting these at a discount. You're getting whatever the case is, right? Everybody has their own opinions on this. The reality of the situation with the scenarios that I'm dealing with is we have somebody that's in a financial and health crisis, right? Both at the same time. Who is there to help them? Their kids live out of state in most cases. Their kids live out of state. Mom or dad lives here in Arizona because that's where they wanted to retire. The kids don't have any money to help out. So what are they going to do in this situation when they can't go back home and they have no money? What are they going to do? So somebody has to be there to help them. And that's not data that's going to the public records. Hey, you know, Sally fell. You know, she's in the hospital and it's on day 34. You know, somebody should reach out to her and give her a cold call so they can buy the house. It's not happening. We need direct relationships inside of those communities and inside of the hospitals, and just be integrated with them as a resource to help them move their operations forward on a daily basis too. Right? Yeah,
I mean, it becomes a win-win, right? I mean, at that point, you're using something that's in place to help the organization that's actually going to help the person. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they have a way to get allocated per se. Yep. It's a great model, man. It's you know, kudos for you as well for seeing it, right? I like. Sometimes it's the reluctance to jump into this red ocean per se when it comes you know, to business. It's like, no, it's saturated, competition is high. I guarantee you there's always going to be there's a million ways to skin the cat, but there's always going to be one thing that can really be in alignment with you, and it can become your X factor. Yeah. In this case, I mean, you tapped into an industry that's highly competitive. Mm-hmm. Highly competitive. You look for just a different angle. Okay, like this makes sense to me. I'm passionate about, you know, finances. I know I can talk to older people, and obviously you have this caring personality behind it all, right? Truly. Which I think brings it home.
If I can't help them with my solutions, I'm referring to somebody else that can, right? Yeah. I'm not a licensed agent. I don't care to be a licensed agent. But if I've walked into houses plenty of times where the house is immaculate, it's perfect, and I'm like, I'm not giving you a lowball offer in here. I'm not giving you, you know what I mean? You need to list this on the market. This is ready to go. Yeah. I have a great agent for you. They're going to cut their commission in half for you, and they're going to make sure you're well taken care of. It's being honest with yourself as well. Are you making truly honest decisions at the best interest of who you're working with?
I think when it comes to that kind of client, I mean, and we deal with a lot of sellers like that as well. But I think about my mom, man.
Me too.
Like I bring it home. Like for me, I think about that, and when I'm talking and train my acquisitions guys, it's like it's not about. We have three things that we like three principles that we operate under. One is transparency. Second one is extreme ownership. And then the third one is people over profits. Those three things.
Love that.
Like those three things just encompass like all the actions that we've thought about right now. Like, okay, how should I act in this type of scenario? Like, are we being extremely transparent? Extreme ownership of whatever happens, whatever's, happens is up to me. And then people over profits. Like, don't screw somebody else over because you want to make an extra buck or whatnot. Whatever the best situation or that you can see in your skill set is like, man, like if it's listing the property, put it on the table for them.
Totally.
It's people don't know what they don't know, right? So when we go in there, I feel like we're blessed, in with the ability to see different exits, different angles, right? I mean, for example, we can see different structures in in deals, right? When we're walking in there and we're trying to put something together or a solution together, and they don't know that, but we do. Like, okay, so just act in the best, you
don't want to carry that around with you either. You don't want. I screwed this person over so I could make an extra $25,000. It doesn't feel good.
Karma, man.
Dude, it is bad karma.
It comes back and bites you.
Why are things working out for me right now? Because I'm not screwing people over. I'm doing the right thing. I don't get worked up over losing a deal or if somebody else came and sniped it from me. It's all about relationships in the business, and it goes for the clients that we're working with, the sellers that you're serving. It goes to the employees that you're working with. It's everybody.
1,000%.
You're here to serve them, and you're here to be a resource for them, and that's what's going to keep you moving up to the top.
Yeah, 1,000%. I couldn't agree more, man. I couldn't agree more. I have a good friend of mine. His name is Phil, but he's doing something similar. I should probably connect you guys. His company's named Mom's House.
Yeah, I know all about it. Yeah, okay, cool. Totally. It's one of the very, very few competitors that we have in the space. But we offer a lot more solutions than they do. I know that his is franchisable as well. Yeah. So for people that want to get started, maybe doing something similar to what I am. It's an easy way to do it because he's going to educate you on how to do it. Eventually, I would like to come out with my own course content and be able to educate people on how to do it. I want to do it more along the lines of just the business-to-business model in general. I chose the medical industry because I knew the medical industry. I grew up in the medical industry. My parents were in the medical industry as well. It made sense, right? I was like, this just makes sense. But think about it from a different perspective there. Before things hit the distressed property list or it's going on the county assessor or anything like that, when people are in a very distressed situation, who's it going to first? Who's the first person to get a call when a very big thing happens to a house? Let's say the plumbing goes out. Is it hitting the distressed seller list? No, it's going to go to a plumbing company or a restoration company or somewhere else.
Services,
home services. So now you can start networking with home services companies because if those people can't afford to make those repairs, then that's a lost lead for that plumbing company or the restoration company. However, if I purchase the house because it's a $50,000, repair that needs to be made to the house or whatever the case is, now I have the opportunity to use that plumbing company and say, hey, I'm actually going to buy the property and I'm going to have you guys do the work on it. Instead, $50,000 is way too much for plumbing in any case and anywhere you are. But you know what I mean? Just examples here. Because that could be as low as $5,000 for somebody. $5,000 is the average amount that people declare bankruptcy, is that they have $5,000 in debt. That's the average amount. That's ridiculous. So in that case, right, you have the opportunity to network with so many.
It is to us because we get hits with big sums, right? Sometimes we may not keep the entire thing, but we're used to seeing, okay, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 payouts.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but that's a year's salary for somebody.
Totally.
So the numbers may look out there, may look big, but when you're inside, you're in the industry, but for the average consumer, it's like, shit, man,
$5,000.
It's a hit, dude.
That's a lot. That's a lot. I totally get it. Yeah. So it's going to where your experience is, truly. There's so many industries and so many things you can tap into when it comes to a business-to-business model. Just go with where your strong suits are. You can network with lenders. You can network with anybody and be able to get leads out of them. It's about building the value and seeing how you can bring value to them so that they can return the value to you. Because they're not paying you anything. It's a free service. You're getting paid in houses, which ultimately is the goal.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, that creates a win-win. So
yes,
I like it, man. I like where your mind is at too. Doing a lot of things. You're super young. You have a long runway ahead of you. I'm excited to see what comes next. I mean, building these two businesses on it's a big thing. It's a big deal on its own, right?
Thank you.
The fact that you've been able to do all this over the last couple of years. I mean, it's another thing that's very, very impressive. So I feel your energy. Like I know you're all energy, you're passionate about it. So it feels right, man.
You live it day to day, and it's scary at first, and you have to get into that flow of what works for you when it comes to entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship can chew you up and spit you out too. If you're not going head first, like don't be reactive to things, just be proactive. If you have some extra hours, do the extra research, do the extra tasks that you need to do to set yourself up for success. That's all it is. Or get people to help you if you're at a point where you're making a lot of money in it too.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. So I like to before we start wrapping up and I like to ask, it's more of a personal question, right? But so if you were walking down the street and you ran into your 17-year-old self, I mean, what piece of advice would you tell that kid?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Let me think. So if I ran into myself at 17, I'm trying to think about who I was at 17 years old. I would tell myself if I could give myself the best piece of advice, is to be confident in myself and my abilities and what I can do. Because I had ideas of what I could accomplish. I had things that I wanted to do when I was that age. I didn't want to go into corporate America. I wanted to start my own businesses. And I would always attempt, I say that lightly, because I would create a logo and a website. Okay, I'm going to start a landscaping business.
Oh, yeah, the branding trap.
Yes, exactly. So I would get myself excited by doing that. Like, I'm doing something here. I think when I was 17, I got my first LLC. I did it online. I was like, oh my god.
You got an LLC when you were 17 years old?
Yeah.
I was wasting my life away.
I didn't do anything with the LLC. I forget what it's even called at this point. But I remember logging in, doing that, and I tried to gather all my friends. We're going to start a landscape business, and I didn't have confidence in myself. I didn't have confidence in what I was doing. I didn't have confidence enough to even read books because I thought because my GPA was low. I'm like, I'm not even smart enough to be reading these books. So I didn't even know what direction to go. So I didn't have this confidence in myself. I would tell myself to definitely just be confident and start going for it, man, and just making it happen. There's so many entrepreneurs I meet now where, yes, with social media and things like that, it's blown up so much more. It's way easier to get access to a lot of this information as opposed to at that point. I mean, we were just ending MySpace days back when I was, 17. Everyone was transitioning to Facebook, but
I had a friend named Tom.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was like, it took me a while. I was like, okay, Tom who? And I was like, oh my gosh, MySpace Tom.
It's a MySpace reference for all you
He sold out on that, man. Yeah. He made some money. That thing fell apart. Good for him. No, I would just tell myself to definitely be more confident. I've always been a very patient person. I've always been a self-learner, but I would direct my energy into the things that I actually wanted to do versus what I thought other people would think is cool. Mm-hmm. I was always kind of chasing the trends there too for a while, where I was like, people will think I'm cooler if I do this. People will think I'm cooler if I do that. Versus just taking that upon myself to learn and become confident in myself and my abilities to go pursue things and just taking the risk and just doing it. I had nothing to lose back then.
That's huge, man. It's deep too. I feel like at 17, when I was 17, I felt like I owned the world. Like, man, like this, I know everything that happens out there. Like, I know it all. You know what I mean? And then, of course, I went out into the world and like, oh shit, it's totally different. But I had that hunger, like that fire in the belly, right, to figure stuff out and go out there and just dominate everything. So I like going back to that age, and what I find is with different guests that I have on the podcast. It's not that different. Like I feel like we're thriving in that mentally, right, in that space, and then we get to a point where we get hit by real life, and a lot of that light tends to dim. Yeah, and other people are going to try to dim that light for you too, especially as you go into the real world. People are like, "Oh, you're so gung ho because you're 22 or you're 17 or you're 19." It's just wait till life starts to hit, and then then it's going to suck and you'll be just as miserable as me is basically what they're saying, right? And I'm like, it's not the case either. And I was a completely different kid than you as well when I was 17. So you had the fire in your belly. You had these things. I had it. It was there. And it was in there.
But I was so terrified. I was not confident in myself. I was like, there's no way I can make any of this kind of stuff happen. I was envious of people like you because I'm like, man, they have so much grit and they're just down to go out there and just make it. They don't give a shit what happens, man. I'm like, loud. I cared way too much. I didn't want people to think I was a failure. I didn't want to think I was a failure to myself. So at the end of the day, I look back at that and I'm like, it doesn't matter where you're coming from in your mental space and where you are starting at. As long as you're just getting started, you have the opportunity to create and design the exact person that you want to become. So that's something that we would always list out, my wife and I too, right? We'd list out what does the coolest, the best version of Steven look like? If I could build out Steven and write out his traits and his qualities and who he is as a person and how he operates, what does that guy look like? And how do I become that guy?
Yeah.
And you do. when you write it down and you start actively pursuing it,
there's magic to pen and paper,
man. Oh, you have to do the pen and paper.
Yeah.
Another big thing is goals. I've just listened to your podcast about goals, actually, your most recent podcast.
Pen and paper.
Oh man, you have to.
Yeah, this is me
we used
doing
to do it
what
daily,
you're talking about
man.
right now.
You have to, because and especially if you have a spouse. Here's a pro tip: like, get your spouse writing out their goals and their vision with you. Oh, I love this.
I wrote this at probably 10 a.m. this morning.
You have to.
Yeah.
People don't understand the power.
Yeah. What kind of man am I? It's a question, right? And then you go into it.
What kind of dad do I want to be? I think about that stuff all the time. What kind of this do I want to be? Okay. What kind of business owner? Like, what does that look like? Like, start defining what those things truly look like, you know? And then you can pick and choose what you want to learn. Okay, I'm not really good at sales. I'm going to start reading sales books because I know that the best version of myself is he can close any deal. You know what I mean? He can do these things. So I'm going to start focusing on those aspects. Okay, how do I lead more people? How do I get people to join my vision and my coalition that I'm trying to start here? Let's read leadership books. Okay, so you can start to target specifically the things that you want to grow. And then I'll go back to the goal thing too with setting goals. I always write them out with my wife because in the beginning, it's not that we were on different pages. We just didn't know how each other were thinking. So if you have a spouse or a significant other, you can do this by yourself, of course, too. But we would write out our goals and then we would compare our goals. Yeah. And she'd be like, "Wait, you wrote a helicopter on yours? I didn't know we could dream that big. Wait, we can have a helicopter." I was like, "We can have whatever we want." I'm like, "That's the whole point of this. Like, it's a make-believe world that we're making it up as we go." So do you want to rewrite some of your stuff? Yeah, I want to rewrite some of my stuff. And if that's I didn't think we could think that big. Yeah, you can. Yeah. So we started to align the goals there too, which is so huge because now when you are taking the charge and you're taking that direction to become an entrepreneur and accomplish those things, they're right there with you too. Yeah. They're in on the plan, you know?
I love it, man. I love it. Confidence is a huge thing. Being in alignment with yourself. Once you find your truth, right, and it can be a big, that's a big question. It's a big task to take on. But once you find that, that person in you, you can align everything intentionally, right? All the stuff that you do, your efforts, your energy, like what's it going to? Does it, is it in alignment with the stuff that I'm doing? And you start shaping this path that turns into something beautiful. At that point, it becomes a matter of time because you have the awareness behind it. You have the awareness and the intention. So with that being said, dude, you're an old soul, first off.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're an old soul.
I used to be told when I was in corporate, I'd be 22, 23, and my managers would sit down. They're like, you're like a 60-year-old man trapped in a 20-year-old's body.
Yeah, which is good. Milk that.
Yeah.
The path that you've taken so far, the effort that you've put into it clearly shows. So big kudos. I mean, entrepreneur through and through. So it's been a blast to have you in the podcast, man. Your energy is really good. Much. Keep it up. I want to see. I'm curious, to see what happens over next. How the first.
Hopefully the next podcast is in how he lost it all, and it's not.
Oh no! Don't put that shit out there.
Never. Yeah. It's fun to joke about.
So the one promise that I made myself, because you were talking about the age, I'm gonna die 17 years old.
Yeah.
So I go back because I feel like when growing and through my 20s, I got so much into the business and the nuts and bolts, and I kind of lost that spark. That I to the point where I was doing it and just kind of going through the motions, and it felt tasky, and to the point where I didn't want to go to my own business. And it was like, I got to go there again. So it's like it started dimming, right? Did some work, started reading, and started meditating, just looking inwards, and I was able to bring it back, but I go back to that fire in the belly when I was 17. So I made a promise to myself that it doesn't matter if I die at 100 years old, I'm still gonna be 17.
Oh, I love that, dude.
So if you're talking to me, you don't know me prepared to be, trapped into highly immature conversations.
I was actually just talking to somebody about this yesterday, very similar to exactly what you're talking about too. And it's that whole hating to go to your own business because you've kind of created this job for yourself, if you will, in that same breath. And this is it's a mindset thing here. The way I view this too is like, okay, if you're at that point and you're making enough money to afford somebody else to come in and help you out with things, even if that means that your lifestyle has to reduce a little bit, don't increase your lifestyle until you get some systems and other things in place. Don't just live a big lifestyle because you can, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm making $300,000, let's say, and because I just got into real estate or whatever the case is, like don't live on that 300,000. Like still bootstrap it like you're poor and get people in to help you out, because at the end of the day, if you're constantly in the business, you're never getting the chance to look at the business and be able to make big decisions that can drive the business forward too. So the example I was using here, it was my crews. They were messing up on some of the detail work. So I was talking to my project manager about this. She's like, I can't believe they're missing these things. Why are they missing these things? I'm like, well, think about it like this. If you go into your house and it's filthy, right? And it's overwhelmingly filthy, and you clean it up to the best of your abilities, you're going to be like, oh man, this is clean at the very end. I put everything away. But somebody from the outside walking into that is going to be like, man, there's some junk laying around, but you don't acknowledge it anymore because you were so in it that it looks so much better than it once was. That now now they're not seeing the problems that are there, but somebody from the outside can see the problems that are there. And it's the same thing with running a business. Is the way that I look at it is that, like, my business partner on the property management side always wants me to take on more tasks in the business, and I always refuse. I'm like, no, I'm not going to. A, it's not a good use of my time, right? For me to be doing that with you, right? B, like, who's going to be looking at the business? Because if I get that involved and I get that inundated with you in the daily grind, I'm not going to be able to see the vision past this either. I'm going to be stuck in the day-to-day, whereas we need somebody to be able to drive things forward and see what the problems are that everybody's running into. And it's hard to acknowledge those if you're not looking at it from the outside in.
Love it. I love it. And it's so true. So true.
Yeah.
Steven, where can somebody get a hold of you if they want to reach out, maybe collaborate with you on Senior Gaps or Habu?
Totally. Hit me up on Instagram. That's the best way to reach me. I'm always on my Instagram and love to message people back and forth. It's at Steven Hunt, StevenHunt. Such a common name. I joined that right when I was on, Instagram launch, basically. I got lucky.
Hold on to that one.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure to put the handles on the show notes as well.
Beautiful.
So with that being said, brother, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Man. This is great.
My pleasure. Great talk. Great energy.
Thank you.
Love it. Fam, I hope you took notes. With that being said, we'll catch you guys on the next one. Stay focused. You got this.